Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer today, and we're actually going to kick things off by doing a little mental experiment together. I want you to consider a premise that might sound, well, kind of unbelievable at first. What if the absolute greatest mistake you've ever made was believing that you are the one thinking your thoughts? I mean, every single day we casually use phrases like my thoughts, my mind, my worries, my memories. It just feels so completely obvious that there's a you inside your head actively producing every single one of those thoughts, right? But is that actually true?
To test this out, I want you to just pause for a second. Right now, for the next few moments, don't intentionally create a single thought. Just wait. Soon enough, a thought is going to pop up. Maybe it reminds you of some errand you have to run later, maybe it pulls up a random memory from high school, or maybe your brain just says, nothing is happening. Now be totally honest with yourself. Did you actually choose that specific thought before it appeared, or did it just sort of arrive on its own?
And there it is. The crucial point here is that believing we're the active creators of our thoughts might literally be the greatest illusion of the human mind. When we really dig in and investigate, the whole concept of thought ownership completely falls apart. And the crazy thing is, this realization isn't some trendy new idea. It actually sits at the very heart of one of the most profound historical conversations we have about human consciousness.
All right, part 1. A king's restless mind. The struggle against the inner monologue. To really get our heads around this, we're looking at a fascinating historical dialogue between King Janaka and sage Ashtavakra. Now, Janaka wasn't your average ruler. Even though he lived surrounded by unbelievable wealth and absolute power, his absolute deepest desire was just to understand the nature of the self. And he put in the work. He studied the scriptures, he practiced meditation, he sought out enlightened teachers. But despite all of those spiritual practices, there was this one nagging mystery he just couldn't crack: his own mind. Janaka found that his desperate attempts to silence his mind only skyrocketed his anxiety. It's like the harder he tried to push the thoughts away, the more restless and incredibly loud his mind became.
Finally, out of sheer frustration, he goes to sage Ashtavakra. And you can almost feel this frantic, exhausted pacing in his voice as he pleads, "Master, my thoughts never stop. They constantly carry me into memories of the past and dreams of the future. I have tried to quiet the mind, but the harder I try, the louder it becomes. How can I possibly become free from this endless stream of thinking?" It's such a heavy, relatable burden, isn't it? An overactive mind constantly running, just totally out of control.
Ashtavakra listens patiently to the king's desperate plea, but instead of handing him some new, complex meditation technique or a new strategy to fight his mind, he delivers this massive, paradigm-shifting response. He simply asks, "Who told you that thoughts are the problem?" He instantly calls into question the fundamental assumption that we need to declare a war on our own minds in the first place. Which brings us to part 2, the illusion of the thinker, why thought ownership fails. Ashtavakra starts breaking down exactly why Janaka's whole approach is flawed, and the way he explains it is just brilliant. He tells the king, look, the mind exists to think. That's its job, just as the eyes exist to see and the ears exist to hear. Why on earth would you declare war on a biological faculty that is simply doing what it was built to do? Think about it for a second. Thoughts appear in the mind exactly like how sounds passively reach your ears or how smells reach your nose. They arise naturally, completely without your active effort. You don't consciously do hearing, right? It just happens. In that exact same way, you don't do thinking. Thoughts just arrive. And that leads us to this incredibly profound question. If thoughts just appear by themselves, naturally, kind of like sounds or smells, why do you immediately call them my thoughts? Ashtavakra challenges Janaka to search inward and try to locate the actual owner of his memories and his emotions. So Janaka searches, and he finds thoughts, sure, and he finds emotions and memories, but the one thing he absolutely could not find was an owner. The sage then shares this really beautiful metaphor. He points up toward the open sky and says, look, birds fly across it every single day. The sky doesn't chase the birds away, and it certainly doesn't try to hold on to them. They just come and they go. And that is exactly how it is with our thoughts. They arise, they hang out for a bit, and they disappear. So the real mystery here isn't the movement of the thoughts themselves. The mystery is this entity that constantly claims ownership over them.
Moving on to part 3, the controller is a thought, deconstructing the loop of control.
Okay, this is where it gets super interesting, because it completely exposes the trap we all fall into when we try to micromanage our thinking. Let's trace this recursive loop together. Step 1, a thought arises. I must finish this work. Then step 2, a second thought pops up and says, oh, I am thinking. Step 3,
Another thought jumps in. I really should stop these thoughts. And then step 4, yet another thought proudly declares, I am observing my mind. Do you see the pattern here? Every single one of these, even the one claiming to be the all-knowing observer or the controller, is literally just another thought piling on top of the first one. And boom, here is the profound realization that dissolved years of assumptions for King Janaka. The entity inside you that is trying so hard to control the mind, it isn't actually real. The controller is really just another passing thought, falsely declaring ownership and authority over the other thoughts. You're literally just using a thought to fight other thoughts. No way that works, right?
To make this perfectly clear, the sage uses a really vivid physical metaphor. Imagine a whirlpool in a river trying its hardest to stop the river from flowing. Can it? Well, of course not, because the whirlpool itself is made of the river. Just as the whirlpool is part of the river, the controller is part of thought. One thought can never permanently control another thought. It can only create a much bigger, much messier whirlpool of thinking. The sheer futility of using the mind to silence the mind is exactly why Janak's years of intense struggle brought him absolutely zero peace.
Let's actually break down how this illusion of ownership creates all that daily stress and suffering we feel. First, a fearful or angry thought appears entirely by itself. It's just a passing event like that bird in the sky. Second, the illusion of ownership kicks in. Another thought says, "This is my fear," or "This is my anger." Third, because it's now yours, the resistance begins. You start clinging to the pleasant thoughts and fighting the painful ones tooth and nail. Finally, the mind divides against itself. You are completely caught in the whirlpool, and profound suffering begins the exact millisecond that false ownership is introduced. And finally, part 4, the mirror of silent awareness, discovering who you really are. So, if we aren't the thinker, and we aren't the controller, who are we? Let's just take a breath here and move away from that heavy, exhausting burden of trying to control the mind and step into the spaciousness of what actually remains. Ashtavakra delivers this absolute core resolution to King Janaka. He says, "The problem is not thought. The problem is the belief that thought is you." Thoughts are not the enemy here. False identification is.
It's all about reframing the relationship. The mind is a genuinely wonderful, highly capable servant. Whenever thinking is actually needed, it's there. It'll remember, it'll imagine, it'll solve complex problems, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But a servant becomes a massive problem when it starts pretending to be the master. The true master isn't a thought at all. It's the silent, effortless awareness behind the thoughts.
To help Janaka really internalize this lasting peace, Ashtavakra brings in this beautiful mirror analogy. Think of your silent awareness like a mirror. A mirror reflects countless faces, countless emotions, countless passing thoughts, but it never actually becomes any of them. When the reflections disappear, the mirror remains exactly as it always was. Your awareness knows every single thought, but it never becomes the thought. It can't be disturbed, and it doesn't need to be improved. And this is honestly a total game changer because it busts a massive myth. You do not need years of intense meditation to achieve a perfectly blank, silent mind to finally be free. Freedom is not the absence of thought. Freedom is simply the absence of false identification. You just need to stop mistaking the passing clouds of thoughts for the sky itself. So, how do we actually use this ancient wisdom today? Well, here's a super practical, experiential tool you can use the very next time you feel overwhelmed by mental chatter. When a thought pops up, don't try to stop it, but don't actively welcome it either. Just sort of watch it. Then ask yourself, did I actually choose this thought? And if a loud voice in your head immediately says, yes, I am the thinker, just recognize that that is literally just another thought. Look right past it and observe the silent, unchanging awareness that remains, just holding all of it. Which leaves us right here with one final, incredibly profound question to take away from this explainer today. If your thoughts just happen entirely on their own, and you are clearly not the one creating them, who are you without your thoughts? Take a moment to actually feel the impact of that silent awareness. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.